You're lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, and that same thought keeps circling back. Am I going to be eating cat food when I'm 70? You've seen those headlines about the average American retiree, and honestly, they make retirement sound almost achievable. There's this specific number that gets thrown around constantly, and every time you see it, you think, okay, maybe I'm not that far behind. But here's the thing. That number is a complete lie. It's designed to make you feel better about where you are right now, when the reality is so much scarier than anyone wants to admit. The gap between what you think you need and what you actually need to retire comfortably isn't just a gap. It's a canyon. And understanding where you actually stand versus where financial media tells you you're standing is the difference between retiring with dignity and working until you physically can't anymore. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps clarify your financial position, because what I'm about to show you is going to blow your mind. But before we dive into the catch-up strategy, you need to understand exactly how bad the situation really is. Let me ask you something. What do you think the average American retiree has saved up by the time they hit 65? Just take a guess. Is it 500,000? A million? Maybe more? Hold that number in your head for a second. The average net worth for Americans aged 65 and older is around $1.2 million. Yeah, $1.2 million. When you see that number in a financial article, it sounds pretty good, right? You think, okay, if I can get anywhere near that, I'll be fine. I can work with that. Here's the kicker. That average is completely meaningless for understanding where you actually stand. Because when Jeff Bezos walks into a bar, the average net worth of everyone in that bar just became $3 billion. Does that mean everyone suddenly got rich? No. It means the average is a terrible way to measure what's actually happening for most people. The number that matters is the median. That's the middle point where half of people have more and half have less. And the median net worth for Americans aged 65 and older is only around $250,000. Let that sink in. The average is 1.2 million. The median is 250. That gap tells you everything you need to know about wealth concentration in this country. Now let's break this down by age, because it gets even more interesting. For Americans in their 30s, the median net worth is about $45,000. That includes everything: your car, your savings, your retirement accounts, minus any debt. In your 40s, it jumps to around $135,000. By your 50s, you're looking at about $250,000. And then in that critical 55 to 64 age bracket right before retirement, the median sits at around $375,000. Meanwhile, the averages for these same age groups are wildly higher. In your 50s, the average is over $800,000, but the median is $250,000. That's a $550,000 gap created by the top 10% pulling the average way up. Here's why this matters. If you're 55 years old with $375,000 saved, you're right at the median. You're exactly average in the real sense. But that number gives you maybe $15,000 a year to live on if you follow the 4% withdrawal rule, plus whatever Social Security kicks in. That's not financial breathing room. That's financial suffocation. Think about it this way. Financial breathing room means you can handle an emergency without panic. It means you can say no to things you don't want to do. It means one unexpected expense doesn't derail your entire year. And $375,000 at retirement age doesn't give you that. It gives you a tight budget and constant worry about running out of money before you run out of life. The reason these numbers are so low comes down to compound interest and time. When you're 25 and you invest $1,000, that money has 40 years to grow before retirement. It doubles every 7 to 10 years depending on market returns. By the time you're 65, that original $1,000 has become $16,000 or more. But when you're 50 and you invest that same $1,000, it only has 15 years. It might triple at best. The snowball effect of compound interest requires time and consistency, and most Americans don't start seriously saving until their 40s, when half the runway is already gone. Now here's where things get really interesting. Let's look at what the top 10% actually have. To hit the top 10% of net worth by retirement age, you need around $1.2 million. Yeah, that's the same number as the misleading average we talked about earlier. But here's what that actually looks like in practical terms, and why it's more realistic than you think. 1.2 million sounds massive when you say it out loud. But break it down. Maybe you've got a house worth 400,000 with 200,000 in equity after the mortgage. You've got 500,000 in your retirement accounts, another 300,000 in taxable investment accounts, maybe 50,000 in cash reserves. Add it up and you're at 1.2 million. No private jets, no yacht club membership, just a paid-off house and a solid investment portfolio. The difference between top 10% and top 1% is enormous. Top 1% at retirement is around $11 million. That's a completely different universe. That's where you start talking about multiple properties and passive income streams that could fund a small country. But top 10%? That's achievable for someone with a decent income who makes smart decisions consistently over 30 years. Here's the thing most people miss. When you remove the billionaire distortion from your mental model of wealth, being in the top 10% stops sounding like a fantasy and starts sounding like a math problem. It's not about being special or lucky. It's about understanding the formula and executing it without getting distracted by shiny depreciating assets. The identity shift is the hardest part. You have to start seeing yourself as someone who's going to hit that milestone. Not hoping, not wishing, knowing. Because the psychological barrier is bigger than the financial one for most people. You've spent your whole life thinking wealth is for other people, and that belief system keeps you exactly where you are. This is what I call walking away money. Top 10% net worth means you have actual freedom. You can walk away from a job that's destroying your mental health. You can say no to opportunities that don't align with your values. You can handle a major life disruption without it becoming a financial catastrophe. That's what 1.2 million buys you. Not luxury. Freedom. The math is simple. If you're 35 years old and you invest $1,500 a month for 30 years at an average 7% return, you'll hit 1.8 million by 65. If you're 45 and starting from scratch, you need about $3,000 a month to hit 1.2 million by 65. These aren't impossible numbers. They're uncomfortable numbers. There's a difference. But here's the thing most people are missing about these numbers. So if you're sitting there thinking you're too far behind to catch up, here's what you need to know. The reason most Americans hit 65 with almost nothing saved isn't because they didn't earn enough money. It's because they spent 40 years bleeding wealth through a handful of specific financial decisions that seem completely normal. And the biggest one is what I call automotive Stockholm syndrome. The average car payment in America right now is over $700 a month. $700. And here's what nobody tells you about that number. If you're 25 years old and you commit to having a car payment for the rest of your working life, you're not just spending $700 a month. You're giving up over $1 million by the time you're 65? Let me show you the math. $700 a month invested at 7% annual returns for 40 years becomes $1.8 million. But instead of investing it, you're driving it. And the car you're paying $700 a month for today will be worth maybe $3,000 in 7 years when you trade it in for another car with another $700 payment. It's a perpetual wealth destruction machine that we've somehow convinced ourselves is just part of being an adult. The psychology here is fascinating. We tell ourselves we need a reliable vehicle. We need something safe for the kids. We need something that reflects our professional status. And all of that might be true, but you don't need a $50,000 SUV to accomplish any of those things. You've just been marketed into believing you do. This is lifestyle inflation in action. It's the hedonic treadmill where every raise you get immediately gets absorbed by a bigger house, a nicer car, or more expensive vacations. You're making more money than you did 5 years ago, but somehow you still feel broke at the end of every month. That's because your expenses grew faster than your income. And the gap between what you earn and what you save stayed exactly the same or got worse. Here's another killer. The average American household is carrying over $6,000 in credit card debt, at interest rates between 18 and 25%. That's not building wealth. That's setting wealth on fire and then paying extra to watch it burn. If you're paying $300 a month just to service high-interest debt, that's another $200,000 you won't have at retirement. Then there's negative equity. This is when you owe more on something than it's worth. Most commonly, this happens with cars, but it happens with homes too, when people refinance and pull out equity to fund lifestyle expenses. Being underwater on depreciating assets is a financial death spiral. You can't sell without writing a check, so you're stuck making payments on something that's actively losing value. Here's the number that should terrify you. If you eliminate one $500 monthly payment and invest that money instead, you create over $200,000 by retirement. One payment, $200,000. Now multiply that by all the subscriptions, financing plans, and lifestyle expenses you're currently juggling, and you start to see why the median American has almost nothing saved. The path to wealth isn't about making more money, though that helps. It's about plugging the leaks in your financial boat before you try to sail anywhere. Because right now, most people are bailing water as fast as they can while ignoring the giant hole in the hull. Now let's talk about the biggest mistake people make when trying to catch up. If you're in your 40s or 50s looking at these numbers thinking you're completely screwed, I need you to understand something. You're not too late. You're just operating on a compressed timeline, which means you need a different strategy than someone who started at 25. I call this the financial bulk strategy, and it works in 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 is the debt demolition sprint. This is not a casual debt payoff plan that takes 5 years. This is a 12 to 18 month emergency where you attack your highest interest rate debts with absolute intensity. You need to treat this like your financial house is on fire, because it is. Every month you're carrying credit card debt at 20% interest is a month you're moving backwards. Use the avalanche method, minimum payments on everything except the highest interest rate debt. Then throw every extra dollar at that until it's gone. Then roll that payment into the next highest rate. This phase is uncomfortable. You're saying no to things. You're eating at home. You're not taking expensive vacations. But this sprint creates the foundation for everything else. Phase 2 is the income expansion period. Here's something nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Your current income might not be enough to catch up. If you're 45 with $50,000 saved and you need to hit $600,000 by 65, you can't get there investing $300 a month. The math doesn't work. So you need to increase your earning power. That might mean a side hustle for 12 to 24 months. It might mean upgrading your skills to justify a raise or job switch. It might mean getting uncomfortable and asking for what you're worth. Your expertise and experience are worth more than you're currently being paid, but nobody's going to volunteer to pay you more just because you showed up. Here's the thing about side hustles that people miss. You're not building a second career. You're running a focused income sprint to accelerate your savings rate. Drive for Uber on weekends for 18 months and bank every dollar. Freelance your professional skills for 20 hours a month. Sell stuff you don't need. The goal isn't to do this forever. The goal is to create a temporary income boost that permanently changes your financial trajectory. Phase 3 is the automated wealth machine. Once your high-interest debt is gone and your income is higher, you set up automatic investments that you never see or touch. This is critical. If the money hits your checking account, you'll spend it. Human nature wins every time. But if it automatically transfers to your retirement account the day after your paycheck deposits, it doesn't exist in your mental budget. You adjust your lifestyle to what's left. Here's the actual math. If you're 45 and you want to hit top 10% by 65, you need to invest about $3,000 a month, assuming 7% returns. If you're 50, that number jumps to around $4,500 a month. These numbers sound impossible until you realize they're the combination of your own contributions plus employer match, plus the side income from phase 2. Break it into pieces, and it becomes achievable. The psychological resistance you're feeling right now isn't about sacrifice. It's about identity. You're being asked to become someone who prioritizes future freedom over present comfort, and that requires rewiring decades of financial behavior. But here's what nobody tells you. Doing in 10 years what others do in 30 is possible when you increase the intensity. Compression works. You just have to be willing to operate at a level most people won't sustain. The biggest waste of mental energy you can engage in right now is comparing yourself to the average or the median or your brother-in-law who somehow has a beach house. None of that matters. The only comparison that actually moves the needle is you today versus you yesterday. That's it. That's the only race you're running. Here's what I call the personal baseline concept. You're not competing with the top 10%. You're not competing with the median 55-year-old. You're competing with the version of yourself who didn't watch this video and went back to making the same financial decisions that got you here. Every dollar you invest today is a win against that version. Every debt payment is a victory. Every month you don't finance something, depreciating as progress. The paralysis most people feel comes from all or nothing thinking. You look at the $3,000 monthly investment target and think, I can't do that, so why bother doing anything? That's the trap. Because doing something beats doing nothing every single time. Investing $200 a month isn't optimal, but it's infinitely better than zero. And once you build the habit at 200, scaling to 500 becomes easier. Then to 1,000. You know what's actual financial self-harm? Scrolling through retirement success stories on social media. Looking at people who retired at 45 with $2 million when you're 50 with 80,000 saved. That comparison doesn't motivate you. It crushes you. So stop doing it. Unfollow those accounts. Focus on your own trajectory. Here's the math that actually matters. The 1% better principle. If you improve your financial situation by just 1% every single day, you're not 1% better at the end of the year. You're 37 times better because of compound improvement. Small, consistent actions beat massive, sporadic efforts every time. It's not sexy. It's not dramatic. But it works. So here are your exact first 3 moves. Right now. Today. First, calculate your current net worth. Add up everything you own, subtract everything you owe, and write down that number. You can't improve what you don't measure. Second, identify one spending leak. Just one. Maybe it's the car payment. Maybe it's the subscriptions you forgot about. Find one place where money is leaving without adding real value to your life. Third, automate $100 monthly to your retirement account. Not 200, not 500, 100. Build the system first, then scale the amount. The fear of starting late is real, but here's the principle that matters. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best. Time is now. You can't get back the decades you didn't invest. But you can start building compound interest today, and that money will work for the rest of your life. Retirement isn't an age. It's a financial milestone. It's the point where your assets generate enough income that work becomes optional. For some people, that happens at 50. For others, at 70. The number matters more than the age, and you have more control over that number than you think. If you want to learn how tons of Americans are retiring a decade early, watch this next video.